What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, where we go through the latest Detroit Lions news and rumors. And today, we got to hear from Lions general manager Brad Holmes a week out from the 2022 NFL Draft. So we have some notes from Brad Holmes, some takeaways. Also, we got to hear from Lions quarterback Goff, but I don't have too many notes from that. So let's get it started.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here. We are back with another Lions video, man. I'm excited. We're a week away from the draft. That's it. A week away from the draft. I am going to continue to plug this. Make sure you check out doseofdan.com. You can go check out draft profiles of players that I have put together. I have a draft guide over there that's going to continue to be updated, specifically like the cornerback position. I'm working through those right now. So you guys go check that out. It will continue to be updated. Grades will continue to be added. And let me know if there's anything that you think should be updated or changed with the site. Also, tonight we are going to be back and live for Last Second Dose with Rad on this channel about 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, around that time. So make sure you tune in, check us out. Depending on when you're watching this video, maybe on now, it could have already been on and you can see the replay of it. Regardless, we're back, and I'm excited, being only a week away from the draft, that we're back to talk some Lions. So make sure you hop in there, check us out, and see what's going on. Anyways, today we got to hear from Brad Holmes. I didn't know this was actually going down today, but I saw it on the Lions website. It said live video, so I'm like, ooh, something's happening. And I checked it out. Brad Holmes was speaking to the media. He spoke for about 30 minutes. And while there's maybe some little possible headlines you could take from this, I don't think there's anything major. However, there are some notes that I did take that I think we could dive a little bit deeper into, specifically with the top pick in this year's draft. So we're just going to dive into this, just kind of bounce around to different things that he said, because I did pick up in the live stream, like sort of through the halfway through. And then I went back and rewatched it. So these are kind of scattered a little bit if you watched the presser as well. But if you haven't, perfect. We're here. We'll break it down. We'll talk about some of the key notes Brad Holmes made in this presser today. So let's just waste no time. Let's dive into it. Then we'll talk a little bit about Goff, but there really wasn't a ton I took away from that. However, let's dive right into it. So the first note that I took, speaking of Brad Holmes in the draft, someone asked what his kind of philosophy was in the draft. They asked him if he was a more patient drafter or if he was going to be more aggressive. And Brad Holmes said it kind of like this. He basically broke it down as, if there's a player out there that we want, I'm going to try to go get that guy. You know, if there's a player that we really like, we want to have him, I'm going to try to go get that player. We know last year that he said that they were going to do that for Levi. They were going to try to look and trade into the first round. He was told to be patient. And he said that's something that he's, learned from last year's draft, is that, you got to trust your board, trust your guys and where guys may fall. Ended up that Levi fell in his lap, because I think last year he did show us how aggressive he was willing to be. And not like a crazy aggressive where it's, all right, let's go trade all of our picks. I think you can be aggressive in multiple ways. I think you can be aggressive trading back. I don't think that usually comes up, but I think you can be aggressive trading back, trusting your board. Like, hey, this guy's going to get to this spot. We trust that. We're willing to trade back. I think you can be aggressive in many different ways aside from just trading up. But we did see last year when they traded up, made the trade to go get Derek Barnes, back-to-back picks last season from the Cleveland Browns. So I think last year he showed us that he was, willing to be aggressive, that there was a guy that they really liked. But he talked about last year's draft and last year's season really helped him with the patience, trusting the plan. And I think that kind of boils down to even the smaller things, to even just things like the draft, just being patient that, hey, we trust our boards, we trust this how this is going to go down, our research that we did, and we're going to be patient here. Did touch on the free agency period, and someone asked him again about, not signing tons of guys outside of house, and he broke it down last time, but I do want to kind of reiterate what he said again this time, because I think he broke it down a little better. He even tried to come with an example, and I was like, oh, that's good. I like that, Brad Holmes. But it makes a ton of sense. Basically, he said the same thing. Like, when these guys, for example, Tracy Walker, Josh Reynolds, right? These are free agents, but they're not just free agents to us. They're free agents to everybody. It's not like these guys are restricted. It's not like they're exclusive. These are unrestricted free agents. They have an opportunity to go sign anywhere in the NFL. Now, he talked about last time how these guys wanted to come back, but these guys have an opportunity to go everywhere. And the way that he broke it down is that, we take these players and we match them up against other players in the league. We put them here versus all these guys. And it's like, yeah, we could have went out and signed the guy that's under him that we don't maybe think is as good as that player, or Tracy Walker. Let's just use Tracy Walker for example. We could have signed the safety who we don't think is as good as Tracy Walker. And maybe the outside narrative would have been, hey, Brad Holmes is being aggressive, but he said for us, it's just we compare him to the rest of the league. These guys aren't free. You got to keep that in mind too. When we're resigning these players, they're still not free. They still do count against the cap, even though they're just resignings. But I think Brad Holmes is, first off, he stuck to the plan that I think a lot of us thought would happen when we kind of broke it down. But I think Brad Holmes is, kind of done what he's told us was going to be the case, following a little bit off last year. Plus, I think he's done a really nice job filling out a lot of holes because at this point, it looks like, most positions you could say, well, maybe we could wait a little bit here. Maybe we could wait a little bit here. Well, we could wait a little bit here because we got this now. But that's a good thing because, obviously you're going to have to take someone with the 2 and the 32 and the 34 pick if you don't trade out. That's a good thing because you're just then adding talent to your best player available is on your board. Now, obviously, best player available still does tie with needs. Like, you can't draft 3 receivers in a row. Still do it to kind of tie that to needs and what you need and how you need to move around the board. But he has opened up the draft. So I think he's been plenty aggressive. The Deshaun Elliott one really, that's the one that really kind of was like, okay, we're good. Because safety was the position that we didn't really address. I was like, wow, we haven't addressed this at all. But then he got Deshaun Elliott and we're good here. Okay, Tracy, we had to bring him back. You got Elliott. You look at linebacker, multiple guys there. Maybe not big signing, but multiple players. Even though linebacker was kind of light this season, there really wasn't a lot of top names out there, especially younger guys. It really was kind of light this year. You even look at edge, right, bringing Charles back. They brought in guys like Arden Key for a visit. Nothing happened there, but you did bring a guy like Charles back. Cornerback adding Mike Hughes to the mix. Wide receiver adding DJ Chark to the mix. So for a lot of these positions, tight ends, you had Garrett Griffin. Like a lot of these positions, they brought in at least, another piece. So I have no issue with how it's been. Yeah, we haven't had that like major splash signing, I guess, in terms of like contract details. But that's kind of how they outlined that this was going to go, how the plan was going to go for the Lions is this is what we're going to do. We're not going to give out these super long-term deals. A lot of times re-signing your players that what they're going to bring to the table. He even said that with Charles Harris. Like we want Charles Harris and we know what Charles Harris is and we know what Charles Harris brings to the table as a pass rusher. So, again, I think he's followed along with the plan. I got no issues or complaints in terms of the aggressiveness side, in terms of this free agency period. We'll see how that goes though, because they still do want to address that backup tackle. We have not done that yet. Also asked about the progressions of guys like Jeff Okudah and Romeo Okwara. We have continued to see videos of Jeff Okudah, which is nice to see, putting in that work, trying to get back. He said they're all progressing, but he wouldn't go into specifics in terms of their rehab and how they are right now. He was also asked about Sheila's involvement with the team, Sheila Hamp's involvement with the draft pick and the process, and whether or not, she's kind of sticking her nose and they're being like, hey, maybe we should take this guy too, giving some of their thoughts. And Brad Holmes said basically like he keeps her in the loop. He feels like that's his responsibility, is to keep her in the loop with things that are going on, even though she's not really, asking for that. He just keeps her in the loop. But at the same time, kind of how Brad Holmes to me put it, she's not really like getting herself involved in like, hey, you should take this guy and that guy. And that's really what Sheila told us when she did that little sit down, is that, she wasn't going to be involved like that, not trying to affect any decisions that they make. She wanted to be in the loop, see how things are going, be involved with those kind of things, but she didn't want to be involved to the point where she's affecting draft picks, decisions, roster decisions, and that's a great thing. She should not be involved in those, because to me, there's also the side of it where if you're getting yourself overly involved, you may not be trusting the people that you hired as much as you thought. When you really trust those guys that you went out and you got, those guys that you believed in, you can kind of sit back and trust that they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to do, what's right for the team, because you hired them, the background of them. You may want to continue to see what's going on and just kind of understand the process, things like that, be in the loop that way, but not affecting the draft pick. We don't want that. We don't want Sheila, the one that's like, hey, maybe we should go take this guy at number 2. Nah, that's the job of Brad Holmes, his scouts, that whole personnel department. That's their job. That's not something we want Sheila being involved in. So I thought I would throw that out there. I think that's good because it does tell you kind of the trust that she has and the hirings that she made, putting faith in those guys. And to me, that's the way that this thing is going to be successful. And that, again, always comes back to the hiring process and how she went about that. Now let's talk a little bit about this possible 2 pick and some of the draft pick potential. So first off, when you talk about the trade back scenarios, he said there really hasn't been much chatter. And again, we don't know if this is true or not, but he said there hasn't been much chatter, just taking his word for it, since he last spoke to the media, which was, I would say, about a month ago. I don't really remember what that was for, but about a month ago when he spoke to the media, and he was like, there's been a little bit of chatter about the 2 pick. He said that, he would be willing to possibly trade out of the 2 pick before the draft even started. Like, he wouldn't really have to see who's there at number 2, because he'd be willing to do that before the draft even started. And he's been very consistent with that message. We'll get to that in a second. But he has said there hasn't really been as much chatter since that time. However, he anticipates that there's a possibility that the chatter starts to ramp up a little bit into this, last week before the draft, where you kind of have these things planned out. This doesn't want to be one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, maybe we should make a trade. Not like these mock draft simulators. You want to kind of have a plan going into it. That's the way to get the best value. So maybe we'll get this chatter to start to spike up. We probably won't know as fans whether or not it is, but I would assume there's probably some talk going on at the 2 pick. Does that mean they trade? No, but there probably will be some talk going on about, possibilities to trading up to the 2 pick. Speaking of trades, he did say that he has his own trade value chart, and we know that's continued to be updated as years go on. I don't know what the Lions trade value chart looks like exactly, but that has been something that's continued to be updated from the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart as the league changes and, certain positions are more valuable. Everything. The trade value chart continues to be updated, and he says that they have their own trade value chart, but they do take from the Jimmy Johnson value chart and things like that you find online. Now let's talk about this draft pick. So you start off with a guy like Deebo Samuel. They asked him about the Deebo Samuel situation. When you see a guy like Deebo come up, are you interested in a guy like Deebo Samuel? And he said, yeah, we talk about all these players, and we know that they have the pro scouts that, know all about these guys, have reports on all of these guys. He said, yeah, we talk about all these players, but he's going to kind of keep that in-house. He did bring up the financial side of it. When you look at a guy like Deebo Samuel, and you're looking at how much financially guys like Deebo Samuel and receivers are starting to get paid, that does kind of play into the process of looking, okay, do we want to pay a receiver that much money, or do we want to try to go get someone in the draft rather than paying that much money to a proven guy in free agency for a trade, option where you got to give up picks and then sign the player? Or is it one of those things where maybe you'd rather take a chance in the draft because it's going to be much cheaper because that price is set with the new CBA? Would you rather do that, take the chance in the draft, which is not a guarantee coming out? That kind of moves us right into the next part where he's talking about, potential top picks for this year's draft. And like I said, he's been consistent with when he said that, yeah, he'd be willing to trade back before the draft even started, which kind of gave you the feel at the time that it's like, okay, yeah, there's probably not that one guy that's really separating himself where he needs to see if this guy's available, if the Jaguars pass on him, that he'd be willing to, hey, take the draft picks, depending on what the trade offer is. Obviously, if it's just like, hey, you get a 7th round pick, you move back 4 spots, I would assume that he wouldn't take that trade, but that he'd be willing to value possibly those picks, depending on the offer, over sitting there and really seeing what happens, because he said he'd be willing to trade out a 2 pick before the draft even started. Far back is that? I'm not really sure, but I think this is a very important note, and I haven't seen many headlines on this, but this is a very important note here when he says this. He said the top players for us are very evenly graded. Now we'll stop there. We don't know if this is true or not. If he's just saying this, we don't know if this is true or not, but he says a lot of the top players in this year's draft are pretty evenly graded for us. Now, we know that last time when he spoke to the media, he did say that there was a lot of guys' names that they could write down, they could put down, and they would sleep well at night knowing that they have a good player, a player that they really like. He said there's a lot of players like that. And even going back to when he said, that he'd be willing to trade out of the 2 pick before the draft even started, it kind of tells you that, okay, maybe it is pretty even. We'd be willing maybe not to move too far back, but take picks, move back a little bit possibly, and still get one of those players that we really like, where we don't even have to see who goes at number 1 to know whether or not we want to move out of the 2 pick. So I think there's a lot of consistency in there on what he's saying. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's a lot of consistency. That's where things get really interesting. Now, he continued to push the fact that, a lot of times when you have the 2 pick, it's usually thought it's got to be edge or maybe offensive tackle or quarterback, and those are like the only 3 positions you can take that high. That's usually kind of the thought. But he's like, we feel like there's playmakers at a lot of different positions. There's playmakers at all positions. And this kind of transitions us into the next point where he was asked about a possibility of drafting a quarterback with number 2. And he said, look, I've been saying this and I'm going to continue to say this. We are looking for a game changer. We're looking for that, of course, with every pick, but we're looking for a game changer. So if that is a quarterback at number 2, then it's a quarterback.
Keep it consistent. I've been saying all along that, we're looking for a game changer at that pick and really any picks. And so, if that, and I said all positions. So if that position is a quarterback, then it's a quarterback, So, and just because, often it's been slated that, picking up there, it's either be the quarterback or pass rusher or a tackle and all that kind of stuff. But look, I said from day one, man, give me a game changer at any position. And there are multiple positions where we do see that potential game changers could be there in the future. Time will tell, of course, however they develop. We feel very confident in the coaching staff we have to develop those players. But yeah, it could be any position. But obviously, we spent a lot of time on those quarterbacks. We brought a couple in this week, a few in this week actually, and just making sure that we're doing our due diligence, got our ducks in a row. We spent a lot of time with them. them. But, you know, like I've told you guys, even last year, I think it's good business to know the quarterback market every single year. But this one's a little bit of a unique one.
I don't know if they've had other quarterbacks aside from those two actually on top 30 visits. I haven't seen that. So that's kind of an interesting note, you know, when you talk about, well, possibly waiting a little bit longer, because those two seem like they're going to probably go two of the earlier ones off the board. But when you talk about possibly at 32, 34, trading up into the draft, later into the draft, they haven't really brought in many guys aside from Connor Sampson out of Western Illinois, who was a local visit for the Detroit Lions. But that's really interesting when he says that. Not because he says, you know, it could be a quarterback. What's interesting, I think, is that you have to look at when he's saying evenly graded, because what happens, from my understanding, from what I've been told, is that when teams have a lot of players that are, you know, sort of evenly graded, right? If you have, let's say you have a cornerback and you have a tackle and you have a linebacker and they're very evenly graded, just the player alone. And he's like, look, I don't really buy into the, well, they had a good team around him, so maybe they're not as good as we think they are. He's like, you just have to evaluate that player on their own. And that makes a ton of sense. But when you have a lot of these players that are kind of evenly valued, then the next step, from what I've been told from a scout, looking at the needs of the team, looking at the financial side of that draft pick. And when I say needs of the team, it doesn't just mean, okay, well, what do we need this season? Where is there a massive hole on our team this season? Needs for the team financially not only means this year, it can mean 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Where's our roster set up at? You know, how is our roster set up? What guys are under contract for multiple years? They're evenly graded. That means they think they're going to come in and they're going to be ready to go because they're already evenly graded. But it does come down to the need side and the financial side, which could be the separating factor when you're talking about guys that are very similarly graded on their board. And why that's so interesting is because then you could take a look at where the Lions are at position-wise, and they may be looking at this differently than I am, and you can kind of look at each position and say, okay, where the Lions really need help and what positions financially are costing a lot of money for teams in free agency. Because you take a look at the safety position. How expensive are safeties in the NFL? How much do teams normally pay at the safety positions? What's the value at that position? So you can do that. You know, we're talking about receiver, and the value is skyrocket. The average salary for a receiver for the top 10 receivers is higher than edge now. It is skyrocketed this season. Tyreek Hill, $30 million. Devontae Adams, Stephon. I mean, it has absolutely went through the roof, and this will continue to probably change. You have a guy like Deebo Samuel, who's apparently requesting a trade. Could be just simple as, hey, I'm pushing the envelope. I want to get a deal done. But he's probably looking at 30 plus. He could be the highest paid receiver. He could be looking at 35 million, which is why I don't think the Lions are super interested in that side of it. That's where things get really interesting. If we take Brad Holmes' word for it, and it's not like, okay, these guys are separating themselves, which he probably wouldn't tell us anyway. But if it is similarly graded, you can look at kind of where the Lions roster is and maybe try to project, okay, where do they feel like they need help future-wise, things like that. So let's take a look at this kind of diagram I kind of put together of guys that are under contract. Now, I don't have offensive tackle up there. When you look at the offensive tackle position, of course, Penei Sewell's a rookie, so he's got 3 years left plus the 5th-year option on his deal. Taylor Decker, who has 2 years left on his deal, and then he has his 3rd year as a void year, which could be open to a possible extension. You know, they could consider that once again. We know we need a backup offensive tackle. When you look at it, we have guys like Matt Nelson, but behind that, we really don't have anybody else. So we know we need a backup offensive tackle. I don't think it'll be a top pick. You could argue, well, maybe they go tackle and try to put him at guard. Big V, he's not really going anywhere this year, so it would surprise me if the Lions did that this season. However, down the road, I don't know if they think Big V is a long-term answer at guard. I think that could definitely be something that's replaced at some point, whether that's with a guy like Tommy Kramer or Stenberg, who's currently on the roster, or with a new draft pick for a guy that really fits that position better. Big V is 6'7", very long, ideal size for a guard when you're looking at more like 6'4", 6'3", that kind of thing. So definitely could be replaced. Don't think it'll be end up being though with the top pick. But when you look at some of the positions that could be in play to me with the top pick, you take a look at quarterback, you look at safety, you look at cornerback, and you look at edge. The two positions that stick out to me are the two on the left, edge rusher and cornerback, that could definitely be in play for that top pick for the Lions. Now, when you look at a position like safety, Lions clearly, just based on that diagram alone, they need to add another safety to the mix through the draft. I mean, you could hit a UDFA, they get signed to a 3-year contract, but to me, there's no question they're going to go for at least one safety in this year's draft, possibly two. The safety position, while, you know, the average contracts are going up, when you look at the top 10 on average, they're making $14.6 million. It's still nowhere near the other positional groups. And if you look at the Lions, Tracy Walker, who just got that 3-year deal, which wasn't massive, they are already 11th in the league in terms of spending next season, and this will fluctuate, spending next season at the safety position by just having basically that deal alone. Deshaun Elliott, 1-year deal. CJ Moore, 1-year deal. Brady Breeze, Jalen Elliott, Juju Hughes. Those players don't have any guarantees on their contracts. So to me, it's very clear the Lions need safety help, and possibly if they traded back, Kyle Hamilton could become in play because it's obvious they need safety help. I don't think it will be at the 2 pick. It could come into play, possibly depending on how far they would trade back or if someone was slipping through the cracks. But I think that's the spot where it definitely looks like, yeah, mid-round, round 2, round 3, probably should be in play if the Lions draft pick stayed the exact same, which they probably won't. They'll probably move around. Probably should be in play then for a safety because you need someone. You definitely do. Elliott's coming off of injuries anyway, so there is that. But even if he is healthy, he's only on the 1-year deal. So definitely will be a position I think they address for safety. I just don't think it'll be with the top pick in the draft. Now, when you look at cornerback and edge, that's where things get really interesting to me. You start off with the edge rusher, edge defender position first. First thing to take note of is that the Lions have 2 guys, specifically Romeo Okwara and Charles Harris, who are under contract for 2 more seasons. Romeo signed a pretty big deal with the Lions when he initially signed it. Last year his cap number was low. This year it really moved up to like $14.5 million. They backloaded that contract a little bit, but unfortunately he didn't play last year, so we really didn't even get to see him last season. And then you have Charles Harris, who has just signed a 2-year, $13 million with the Lions. His cap number again is low this season, $3 million, but it bounces up to about $8 million next year, and then he has a void year on top of that for about $2 million, which basically, if you look at Charles Harris's contract to me, because the way it's set up, he's clearly locked in for this year. His dead cap is like $7 million. Next year, his dead cap is about $4 million. So you could move on, but you probably don't want to. However, it sets up where it looks like you could definitely look to re-sign him after, if he has another good year this year or next year, could definitely consider a possible extension there, take that void year and spread it out through multiple seasons. So it opens up the door to me, but for sure, for a guy like Charles to possibly again get another extension down the road. Then you have Julian Okwara, 2-year deal, still in his rookie contract. I mean, he's missed some time with injury, showed us a lot of stuff as a pass rusher last year, but not very much of a run defender. Still an area that he needs to improve. Same thing with Romeo Okwara. Charles Harris was our best run defender. Austin Bryant's got 1 year left on his rookie contract. Then you look at Rashad Berry, Jesse Lemonnier. Both those guys, neither of those guys have guarantees on their contract for next season. So basically $20.9 million is invested as of now in that position, currently in positional spending. We know they did bring in a guy like Arden Key for a visit, so clearly they're still interested in possibly adding some more help to that positional room, but that didn't end up happening. We'll see if anything changes. So it's still a little bit below average, 17th, which means you're not spending a ton of money there, but it is important to also mention that Trey Flowers, because of his dead cap, which is about $12 million for this season, if you add that $12 million on, because it's dead cap for this year, which we're basically paying, but he's not here. That's what that means. You'd be 6th in the NFL in terms of price being paid at that positional group. Then it's important to mention that let's say the Lions stay at the 2 pick, because it is a set number. If the Detroit Lions stayed at 2 pick and took an edge, and that goes with every position, you'd be looking at about $7.5 million in terms of cap number for this year. So at that point, you'd have technically one of the most expensive edge positions in the National Football League. Again, if you include the Trey Flowers side, which they don't because he's not here. It's dead cap. But it is something to kind of make note of. When I look at it, I see, okay, clearly the Lions can add another one because I see 3 locks. Romeo, Charles, Julian. Aside from that, I can't really say I see tons of locks, right? Lions last season came in with 5 edge defenders. I think Austin Bryant could make the squad. I think they'd like to keep him around for his final rookie year deal. It's not very expensive. We know he's missed a lot of time, but he showed up a little bit last year. Berry, Lemonnier, neither of those guys are at all locks to make the team. So it definitely leaves it open for we could add another player here. Now he's saying he wants a game changer based on Brad Holmes' past, the LA Rams, and the type of defensive ends and defensive linemen they brought in and how much they value that position, that it would make a lot of sense that this would end up being the Lions' top pick in the draft. Of course, that doesn't mean you have to come in with 5 edge defenders. We don't exactly know what schematically they're looking at for next season because we didn't really see Romeo healthy, and when he was healthy, we were running like a 3-4 defensive style. We weren't running like the 4-down defensive lineman, and maybe the Lions are looking at it saying, hey, we're going to have Brockers play like a 5 tech. We're going to kind of walk down a linebacker to that side, and then on the opposite side, we'll use our edge defender. They could be looking at it like that, but if you're going like the 4-3 defensive line, let's just say in the inside you have Brockers and Levi, and then you want 2 like defensive ends, like pure defensive ends, not Michael Brockers, then you have to look at it as, okay, which guy do you trust on the strong side? Don't really trust Romeo there. Okay, he hasn't been great against the run. He's also done a lot of his work against right tackles, but not great against the run. And then at the same time, you have a guy like Julian, not really proven it against the run. He's more of a pass down specialist last season to this point. Charles is good against the run, but then at that point, you're basically telling yourself, okay, Charles is going to have to start at that position because he's the guy that handles the run the best. And otherwise, we're in trouble because the Lions struggled a lot last season against the run, especially once they started to lose some of their edge defenders. So to me, if I'm looking at it, okay, maybe an edge defender that can help us against the run, play on a strong side. That's why a guy like Jermaine comes up. I feel like a lot of guys could do it, but guys like that, Jermaine Johnson, Aiden Hutchinson, they're evenly graded, and let's say they have a very similarly graded edge defender for their top pick and a cornerback for their top pick, and both the guys are sitting there and available, whether they trade back or not. You kind of have to compare the two positions and say, okay, well, how do we think the Lions look at these two positions for needs now and down the road? You look at cornerback. You have Iffy under contract, 3 years left. He's on his rookie deal. You have Jerry Jacobs under contract for 2 years. AJ Parker under contract for 2 more years. Jeff Okudah has 2 years left on his rookie deal, plus he has a 5th-year option. Amani Oruwariye has 1 year left on his deal. He's going to be a free agent after the season. And you have Mike Hughes, who is signed to a 1-year deal. Beyond that, Mark Gilbert, Parnell Motley, Savion Smith, Bobby Price, none of those guys have guarantees on their contract. Which, if you look at the Lions financially, that means they're putting $18.1 million into that position, which is 19th in the National Football League. Now, like wide receiver, cornerback's value has been going up big time. Edge rusher is still huge. It's the top 10 edge rushers in the league on average are getting $23.3 million, which is insane. But now wide receiver is $24 million. Cornerback is sitting at just over $17 million, and safety is about $14.5 million. So the top 10, the top paid edge rushers are still more expensive than cornerback. Like Jalen's the most expensive cornerback at $20 million per year. So it's still more expensive. The top 10 edge rushers are still more expensive, which has to be taken into account, because just like the receiver position, when you look at it and you say, okay, well, look at how look at how the market is going with this. Okay, receivers are getting paid a lot. So we have to keep that in mind when it comes to our draft. Do we want to be in a spot where it's like, hey, these receivers are going to get paid a lot when they either our guys hit free agency or when other guys hit free agency? If we want to add help, it's going to be expensive. Or do we rather just try to grab that in the draft, possibly, or in a comp pick down the road? Who knows? But cornerback's value does seem to be going up, and it probably will go up with how much receivers are starting to get paid. You're seeing guys like Denzel Ward get a nice deal, so that value will continue to go up, especially as receivers continue to get paid. So you have to keep that in mind. But I think when you look at that position, where when you look back with the LA Rams, they've never, from what I looked through, when Brad Holmes was there, they never came into a season with their 53rd-man roster with more than 6 players at the cornerback position. They never did it. And if you look at the Lions, so I put that line, that's 6 cornerbacks, and to me, all of them could definitely make the team. I think Iffy's a lock. I think Jerry Jacobs is a lock. I think Jeff Okudah's a lock. I think Amani's a lock. Hughes, we'll see. He has about $1 million in dead cap, so he's kind of on the border. We could see there. AJ Parker, we'll see. I think they'd like to keep him. Obviously, AJ Parker, Jerry Jacobs, after this season, they're going to have an opportunity to start discussing extension with those 2 players, so those guys could end up getting paid. So that is a position that right now you have the guys there. If you drafted a top cornerback, not to say you can't have 7 on your 53-man roster, it's either that, however, or it's one of those guys not making that 53-man roster, which is something that you have to keep in mind. I think this is more of an outside looking in perspective, but I think you can, as a fan, at least look at it and say, well, look at what we did with cornerbacks. And honestly, you could probably say the same thing with safety, but look at what we did with Okudah. Look how good he looked in training camp and how dominant he was. How about Amani, having his best season, 6 interceptions last year? How about Jacobs being one of the top corners in the National Football League, a top 5 corner by some metrics in the NFL last season? How about you look at a guy like Iffy, the improvement, even though he missed a lot of the season, when he came back, the improvement that we saw? How about that? I mean, when you see that improvement, does that make you think, well, maybe we don't need to go that high for cornerback because they're going to get it out of a mid-round pick or whoever that may be? We got 2 undrafted free agents playing a lot last year, and while Parker was probably our worst coverage guy last season, Jerry Jacobs was absolutely outstanding. So maybe we don't need to use that high of a pick. And all the coaches are great at development, and you could kind of argue the same thing for edge. I mean, Julian had a nice season when he was healthy. You had Charles Harris, who had a career season, so there also is that to throw in there. But maybe you look at that and say, well, our defense coordinator specialty is the cornerback position. He was a cornerback, and also we have Aubrey Pleasant. So maybe we trust being able to wait a little bit more on that. And because we have this many guys under contract, we're going to get it out of them where we don't need to push that envelope that high for that position. Instead, we'd rather go with edge, where we need someone that's dominant against run, where we just don't really have that piece, versus cornerback, where you have guys like Mike Hughes, where you have guys like Jeff Okudah, where you have a lot of these younger guys. And you're like, well, maybe there's something here. Edge, it's aside from Julian, you kind of feel like maybe you know what you have a little bit more. But if you look down the road, it does does make a little bit more sense for corner when you see how the value is probably going to continue to go up with this position group. Edge rusher is always going to be super valuable because run defense, pass rush, from down to down bases, they're just more involved. When you look down the road, it seems to make a little bit more sense because, like, okay, Amani may not be brought back after this year. And if he does have a good year like last year, let's say he puts up 4 picks, he's probably going to get paid a lot by somebody. Do the Lions want to pay that? I think he'd be a very good re-signing potential, but do they want to pay that? Mike Hughes, if he has a year like Charles Harris had at cornerback, he's probably going to be in store for some money. And with the cornerback value starting to go up, that's something that you have to look at is, okay, well, after the season, let's say Amani, Mike Hughes, they both go on elsewhere. Now Okuda has 1 year left on his deal. Jacobs has 1 year left. Parker has 1 year left. Now you're negotiating possible re-signings here if he has 2 years left. Would it be nice to have that draft pick, also knowing that that's one of those positional groups where you do like to have at least a year of development versus edge, who, yeah, needs development, but you do believe that they can come in and be more of an immediate impact player. Not the case with everybody. Everybody's different. So to me, when I look at it for now, edge makes more sense. Down the road, you can start to kind of argue for corner, but I think you can make the same argument for edge too, because after this season, Romeo's only got 1 year left. After this year, Charles only has 1 year left, right? And there's, a little bit of an out there, plus there's a void year, so he's kind of in line to get re-signed. Julian would only have 1 year left. Bryant wouldn't be under contract. So I think both of those are the two positions. If there's two positions, you're like, well, where would the Lions probably be looking? It's those two. Then you have to decide based on what the information we're given is, okay, where would the Lions look here? Because after this year, you don't have to worry about the Trey Flowers dead cap, right? So you don't have to worry about that. Based on the history, I'd still lean to probably edge, but cornerback to me definitely is in play at 2. Those would be the two positions. Safety doesn't seem like as much. It needs to be addressed, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be the topic to me. And quarterback, you have Goff on a 3-year deal, Boyle, Blau. It's important to mention when you look at Goff's contract that you look at the position, we're like 4th in the NFL. You're like, wow, $35 million for quarterbacks, and Boyle and Blau are only on 1 year deals. Yes. By the way, David Blau, if you look at his contract, barely has any kind of guarantees, like 150K. So he could definitely be moved. I mean, that's one of those guys that could be cut. Could end up on the practice squad. He's not really a lock. Boyle, on the other hand, is more of a lock. He's got $1.75 million guaranteed. Never is a lock for sure, but I'm sure the Lions would just not like to cut that guy. So $1.75 million seems more of a lock to be a quarterback here. Blau, we'll kind of see. You look at that position, it's important to keep in mind, quarterback's always going to get paid. And when I look at quarterback, I don't look at it like receiver. I don't look at quarterback, and you can, but I don't look at it like some of these other spots where it's like, okay, well, we have the value. It's not just player versus player. It's also player versus, quarterback. Like, let's say, for example, it's not Goff versus Kenny Pickett. It could be Goff versus Kenny Pickett plus $20 million because of how much you're saving. But to me, I don't look at that as much with quarterback because quarterbacks always reset the market. Yeah, for a few years that's the case, but the thing is these guys are always going to get paid. And for Goff, while at one point he was really high paid, just like Stafford was the highest paid quarterback, it's always going to reset itself. For a while this year, we're set right now to be 4th in cap spending at quarterback. That won't be the case next year. Next year, Goff's going to drop down to 10th. And again, that's not with re-signings or anything like that, so that could drop even further. But as of right now, he dropped down to 10th in terms of price being paid at that quarterback position. Then the next year, it's 8th. However, that's because there's only 9 quarterbacks who are really getting paid in 2024 as of now. So he's going to continue to drop down to the point where he may be below, 16th in terms of how much he's getting paid by year. So you just got to keep that in mind. Quarterbacks really aren't like the other positions. With the quarterback, is just finding the quarterback and just understanding that we're going to have to pay him at some point, and that will reset. He'll work his way down because every team, as soon as they get the quarterback, they get off the rookie deal, they reset the market. So you're always kind of going through that process with quarterbacks. So quarterback is way less interchangeable than a receiver, than really any other position, right? Quarterback is, let's just try to find our guy. You're not really caught up in the financials of that. Just go get the guy, which is why at the time with the Stafford situation, I wasn't worried about, well, we could save money by going to get a rookie, because that's not what it's about. It's about, you have this guy, you just need a quarterback in the NFL. You're going to have to pay the guy. Everybody has to pay their quarterback. But if you have that guy that you believe in, then at that point, you have to be able to build around him financially, because every team has to go with it. And we know that the salary cap is expected to really boom these next couple of years. So you're in a really good spot with actually Goff's contract. Yeah, this year it looks a little rough, but it's really not if he's able to prove himself this year. And that's why I'm in the, focus on building around the guy, because let's say hypothetically Goff plays well this year. You focus on building around, he goes out and has a good season, and don't even really worry too much about quarterback. Then guess what? When the salary cap starts to take off and guys continue to get re-signed and Goff's contract is where it is and it's already locked in for the next couple seasons, price tag is going to look very cheap compared to a lot of guys in the league. It's not going to look like very much, and now the Lions are going to be a good financial situation. It's really a lot about timing. Like the Browns with Baker, right? They went out and got a quarterback even though Baker was there, because it's really just about trying to find that guy rather than trying to worry about too much of the financial side, because you just know you're going to have to pay that position. The struggle is not the financial side. The struggle is finding the quarterback. Just the hardest position to find. Now, that's not to say there's not good players at other position that can be very beneficial, like receiver and cornerback, and I think cornerback's even tougher to find than receiver. Those positions are much more interchangeable than quarterback. Now, Brad Holmes did say that when you look at the fifth-year option, he said it really sticks out, more with quarterback than any other position.
If you pick a quarterback there at 32, obviously you do have that fifth-year option. Is a team that is sitting right at the top of the second round or middle in the second round that wants to, trade up into, in front of us, to pick a quarterback, So there is value there, because obviously you just don't know how long you assume how long you think that it'll take to develop a quarterback and when he'll be available to help you, but to have that extra year. It could be that scenario as well, but it's been more vogue at the quarterback position.
For example, if we drafted one this year, he's sitting behind Goff, that when he comes in, you're going to also have that fifth-year option. Almost didn't lose that year. So there is that benefit of doing that. If you're going to do it and you're going to want to get a developmental guy where, he has a little bit more time with the fifth-year option. And when he said that, then you have to look at teams in the second round, mid to early second round that possibly could look to move in front of us and try to get a quarterback. To me, it made it really interesting, sounding like, yeah, Brad Holmes could definitely be in play here for possibly looking to trade up from the 32 pick, move into somewhere in the mid-rounds, and depending on who's available, may look to grab a quarterback if they do end up slipping like some people think they could. That could end up coming in play. I think it's way less likely at 2, but I think it is possible that the Lions did it with their second pick, whether that's 32 or whether that's trading back into the draft using 32, possibly 34, possibly future picks, whatever that may be, especially if you trade back at the beginning, because then you could trade up and it's not even like you're losing picks. To trade back into the draft tells me that he could be eyeing that, hey, if a certain quarterback falls through, whether that's maybe pick him, is that Malik, I don't know. If a certain quarterback starts to slip through, we may consider trying to jump up and going and get that guy, keep the fifth-year option, but at the same time, not let one of those teams jump in front of us and then try to grab a quarterback that we may have been waiting on. So I think 32 in those spots is very movable, whether that's trading back or whether that's trading up. But if you're going to trade up, it's going to likely be for a quarterback, because like he said, it's not like that for other positions. He thinks the fifth-year option is much more important for a quarterback than it is for other spots. So if the Lions do end up trading for 32, keep an eye on it being a quarterback. Then they could have 5 guys that they say, well, this actually would be best player available. But you have to find a way to separate them. And again, grading goes beyond just what they are on the field. Grading goes to character. You grade guys on more things than just, hey, here's how I played on the field. They grade them on a lot deeper than that, because they have the scouts doing all that. So if they're grading them evenly, now it starts to look at roster, needs, financials, all those kind of things start to come into play. Did say that, it would be nice to add some, draft capital for future years as well. He's always down for that. Basically, he said it would, make you a little more optimistic.
He has such a way with words.
About those upcoming drafts. He said, plus, we already have done that. They have 2 first-round picks lined up for next year as well. So that's what Brad Holmes kind of gave us answers on. Didn't go much deeper than that, and we don't expect him to. We'll see how it goes. I would like to go edge at the top pick, but I think trade back's very much in play. If you have several guys evenly graded, and it's like, hey, we got 6 guys that we feel like we're good with, then trading back, if they do get an offer to move back 4 or 5 spots, is very, I would say, likely to happen. I'm just being honest. I would say it's very likely to happen. So let's continue. Jared Goff. Don't really have any notes from this. To me, he looked kind of frustrated. A lot of questions were about if they do draft back a quarterback, how are you going to feel about that? Are you going to help him out things? Like, he clearly seemed a little frustrated because he knows that's not something that he can control for Jared Goff. He just has to do the best that he can. And, it's a weird question to ask him, because what's he supposed to say? He knows that he has no impact on what the Lions end up doing with that pick as of right now. It's not like he can, I'm sure Jared Goff, if he had the option, they're like, hey, do you want us to draft a quarterback with the first pick? He'd say no, but he doesn't have that choice. That's not his choice to make. All he can do is focus on him, and a lot of questions seem to kind of revolve around that, and it was like he was clearly frustrated by the time he walked out. I believe, maybe not, he seemed frustrated, and I do understand it.
That room, do you have any concerns or thoughts about what this team might do at the quarterback position in this draft?
No. Whatever it is, I trust those guys. They've expressed a lot of confidence in me, and feel good about where I'm at with them, and where we're headed. I'm excited about it, but if anything were to happen there, no concern, and trust those guys upstairs.
You would enjoy do you think you would enjoy a mentorship role at any level?
I don't know. I think yeah, maybe. I mean, I've always liked helping younger guys. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I've never been in that position, but I don't know. I'm sure I would be the same guy I am and be helpful if I felt like it. Yeah, I don't. There's no way to me to control it. I don't know. I mean, what do I make of the talk? The talk is always just talk. If it happens, great. I'll deal with it from there and be the best player I can be. If it doesn't, then you guys will probably won't talk about it again. So it's the way the media cycle works. And again, I trust those guys up top, and like I said, they've expressed confidence in me, so I'm excited.
He did say, though, he is excited, with some of the players that they're getting, and I understand that as well because, you got guys like DJ Chark, who he said it's just been really nice to just, not only practice with him, but also just kind of meet those guys, get an opportunity to talk with them. Obviously, we're going to Josh and St. Brown, but, guys like DJ Chark getting that experience. He said he's talked to guys like Blake Bortles, who was with him for a year, and, he said everybody that he's heard from likes the guy. So just getting those extra reps in, those extra opportunities. They believe they can do it. They know they're just going to take the work. But, you do like the offensive line that looks like it's on its way back. You see Frank Ragnow working out. That's got to have you excited. It's really all the notes I got from the Goff side. I really didn't take many other notes aside from that. It was kind of on the shorter side, but just the fact that he seemed a little frustrated with the questions. And I do get it. I understand it. I'd be kind of frustrated too. Like, why are you guys asking me this? Like, what am I supposed to say here? Yeah, please draft it. Like, come on, man. Obviously he doesn't want them to draft. Why would you want them to draft your potential replacement? Like, for me, Goff, he's in a very big prove it year. I mean, it's not just prove it for, well, is he the line starter? It's prove it for his career in a sense. I mean, at his age, if you draft a future replacement, lines go high and they grab a replacement for him, obviously he could beat that out. It's possible. We've seen it, right? Jordan Love may not even get a shot in Green Bay, but it's really tough to do that. Once you draft that guy, you're kind of showing that, yeah, this guy's probably going to be that. And to me, quarterback, again, is not one of those spots where I'm drafting a quarterback because it's like, well, financially, I'm saving money. I don't care. Quarterback's different. Quarterback is, I got to believe in this guy that he can be my future. That's why I put the pick on him. That's why I pay him the big bucks. It's not, unless it's a 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round UDFA, that's completely different. But if it's a top pick in the draft, it's not, well, it's money saving. It's like he says, he wants game changers. That is a guy you believe can be the future. So if the Lions did that, that's what they're doing. So, Goff clearly doesn't want that to happen. We'll see if it happens or not. I don't think it'll be with the top pick. If it's a UDFA, if it's a 3rd round and back, I mean, it's a completely different situation at that point because then you could definitely beat that guy out. There's a lot of guys 3rd round and back that don't even make teams. So it's different, but I could see Lions doing that as well. I like that Connor Sampson, possible UDFA, possible late round option out of Western Illinois. That would be cool to me. Again, Blau's not locked in. Boyle kind of is, so you could bring in a 3rd quarterback, or they may not. Just depends on how the board goes. And they've, again, like every position, kind of opened themselves to be like, well, we didn't find a guy we loved in the draft, so we didn't have to take him, which means that, yeah, we could bring in a UDFA quarterback to compete, but if he doesn't make it, we still have 3 quarterbacks already here. So I think they've done a really nice job with free agency and how they've addressed it to open up needs. But anyways, I'll leave it there, man. Make sure you check us out tonight. Last Second Dose. Thank you, Prop, for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'm out.